Hi, everyone. Welcome to this very special live transmission. I have an even more special guest with me today, Ricksecker. And Mike Ricksecker is a researcher who has a remarkable path, to say the least. He's the author of the award-winning Travels Through Time, Amazon bestseller Portals to the Stars, A Walk in the Shadows, and Alaska's Mysterious Triangle, as well as several historic paranormal books. He also hosts trips all over the world. He has been also invited to different like very renowned shows and platforms like Gaia. He has his own publishing company, and I could go on and on and on. Regardless, that's just part of what brought us here today. The topic that we're going to be mainly exploring is Stargates, a topic that Mike loves and me as well, as you guys know by now. So, welcome, Mike.
Thank you, YssaH. I really appreciate being on today.
Well, I'm so happy having you here. As you guys might already know, Mike and I will be also at the Rise of the Guardians on May
Mhm.
from the 8th to the 10th in Sedona. So we will be having a lot of fun. Mike will also be speaking there as well as I will. So without any further introduction, so Mike, can you share with us what brought you in this path? Just as a
Yeah, it's a few different things because really it's kind of two paths for me merging. You know, early on as a child, I was an experiencer with what um, what what a lot of people would describe as a shadow person, and that was the emphasis of one of my previous books, "A Walk in the Shadows: A Complete Guide to Shadow People," where I took a journey through that experience, experiences of others, and really kind of tried to get to okay, what is actually going on here. In my particular incident, and I didn't know this back then. I was only 8 years old, of course. Um, but my particular experience as I went along my path was discovering that this was some sort of interdimensional being that that I experienced that particular night. So that path, I was a paranormal investigator for a while. I was really fascinated in that type of phenomenon because I saw many other things as a child as well. And so I was down that path, but I also always had a distinct interest in ancient wisdom, old ancient sites, this sort of. I mean, I grew up in Indiana Jones, so so there was that. But in the early 1990s, um, and this was when I was stationed in Alaska, I remember the television show Mysteries of the Sphinx when that first aired, and it was the research by Robert Schoch, John Anthony West, was hosted by Charlton Heston, where they redated the Sphinx, and I'm watching, oh, that is absolutely fascinating. And then the following year, the film Stargate uh, came
Mm,
out, so that really was influential for me. And I was like, what in the world is going on there in Egypt? Things are older than what they seem. There could be things like Stargates, and I get that was a film of fiction, but still, it got me thinking. And then along the way, years later, those two worlds of mine really just collided together as I kept researching not just paranormal supernatural activity, but a lot of where these beliefs and some of these different entities came from as I started looking into ancient cultures and ancient belief systems, and of course that meshed perfectly with Egypt.
Hmm. Well, now that you bring that, I felt really in resonance because one of the first experiences that I had as a child was that with light beings, the ones that are called well, I call them plasma beings,
Hmm.
So that also took me to acknowledge. I don't know if you experienced it that way as well, which is more of a remembrance. In this reality, it seems like you're being mesmerized and wowed by all of this that is apparently new. But like deep within it is just a remembrance, is
Yes.
feeling that huge comfortability and like even onto some extent being very familiar to this, even when you talk about stargates or portals or wormholes and all of that. On the one side you are researching about those topics, on the other aspect of it you feel so comfortable with it, it's like you're just talking a story over and over
Yeah,
again.
and it is very much like that. Just recently here, so my wife Kate is a QHHT practitioner, and so she does past life regressions and the quantum healing work and all of that. So she's regressed me a few different times, and the last time, which was just was that January or it might have been early February, just before we headed out to Sedona to get married.
Hmm.
um, we
Congrats.
had a session that basically I was taken to a past life of at a time in Egypt, but before Egypt. So it would have been, what some might call the Atlantean culture and all that. But basically, I got to see different aspects of that lifetime, and I started off as an acolyte at this temple. So I was learning the ways, um, and at the beginning of this, I was waiting in this great hall and waiting for a friend of mine to join me, another one of the acolytes, and he never showed up because what we were going to do was sneak into this ceremony that was happening, and so he didn't show up. So I went in. I went anyway, um, through these little back corridors of the temple and kind of snuck up onto the top of this. It was really like a niche in the top of this really tall wall, and I'm looking down, and it's basically a Stargate activation where they actually had a physical Stargate there, and there were 12 priests. The high priest was in the middle, and they were doing some chanting and all this, and it activated the Stargate chamber that was within this bigger chamber, and there was a light beam that started to come through. So it was really amazing to be able to see that and witness that, and then later on throughout that lifetime, I ended up becoming the high priest and the one that could activate the chamber. So yeah, when we go around to Egypt today for our Stargates of Ancient Egypt tour, and you're pointing out, here's a Stargate, here's a Stargate. It really is just like going home.
Yes, yes, I agree. I heard that you have like one, well, you might have a lot of connection because you like it a lot. The Deir el Bahari, which is the temple of Hatshepsut.
Yes.
I had one of the biggest experiences so far regarding to stargates there and behind the temple of Aswan,
Mhm.
in the temple of Isis in Aswan, the
Yes.
back side where the original
Hmm.
structure was, and
Yeah.
part of it is still is there. So, um,
I'd be
and
interested to hear what happened to you, especially with Hatshepsut, because Hatshepsut's temple to me is the epitome of a Stargate. It's just perfectly designed.
I agree. I mean, it was the first time that I went to Egypt, And as soon as I got in the temple, I and mainly like, well, my body's shaking. And as soon as I entered to the Holy of Holies, like the main
Yeah.
chamber, how they call it, um, no, I was not only shaking, I was crying.
Wow.
Not as a cry like no, it was more like
Right.
contained, like, so the
Mhm.
guards
Yeah.
there felt me so much that they took, like, they made everyone in the room, in the chamber, exit. They
Oh, wow.
closed doors and they allowed me to go inside the chamber where the stars are, where the
Yes.
main point is.
Well, that's
Well,
fantastic.
it was, and it was a huge, soul retrieval, integration. What I experienced there, I was definitely out of the body, was taken away. And how I call it a lot is accessing to codes that I
Mhm.
just needed to reactivate within me for in order to achieve the next stage of my soul mission.
Yeah.
And like I could have stayed there for a while because not even the guards came to get me until someone that I came with to the
Mhm.
trip started calling me, Isha, Isha, Isha. So then it's like, then I came back. I
Mhm.
cannot say that I went through physically to the Stargate,
Yeah.
yet I definitely left the body and I was partly there, but most of my consciousness was already there,
Yeah.
elsewhere, And I do believe, now that we bring this into the table, that the whole Red Mountain is full of Stargates. It's
Oh,
like Sinai. What would you say about the correlation of these red lands to the stargates? I'm not saying that it's like you can only find stargates in these places, but
right.
definitely there is a huge constant that you will find stargates where there is red land set on Luxor, Sinai, and so
Mhm.
forth.
Yeah, absolutely. It's well, and you're talking about I mean, it's the rose granite, which is 55 to 60% quartz. So you have all of that quartz embedded within the rock, and it's a perfect conductor for electromagnetic activity. And one of the things that they were doing at the temples, when you go into pretty much every temple there in Egypt, you're going to cross over a Aswan rose granite block. It might be an entire gate, but at least a block on the ground, the threshold, as you walk into it. And that is to purify you as you go in, to cleanse your energy before you enter the temple, so that you're pure. And so this was an essential part of the whole process. And we see on, like, at the walls at the Temple of Seti at Abydos, you go into the Hall of Ptah Soker, which has two Stargate chambers in the back of it, and on the walls, it's showing us the ingestion of these monatomic white gold cakes before you enter the Stargate chamber. So you have this whole setup of clearing the energy before you go in. So it's setting your frequency to be pure, and then now you're ingesting the monatomic white gold, which is going to set another frequency within you before you enter the Stargate chamber.
Well, now that you mentioned the monoatomic gold, which is also known as Mofkuts,
Mhm.
there is this place, Serabit el Hadim in Sinai, because one of the
Yes.
places that I love the most in Egypt is Sinai,
Mhm.
the peninsula
Yeah.
of Sinai. And I think that that's even why one of the radical groups named ISIS, well, that named themselves
Yeah.
ISIS, uh, um, are there, you
Mhm.
know, guarding that zone due to all the amount of technology that you can find there. I mean, I was walking in Sinai doing my, routine walks,
Right.
and would see bunkers. I won't say like human bunkers, but definitely bunkers, and
Mhm.
even entrances to underground cities, not to say, this type of stargates.
Yeah.
So two things, for the ones that are very familiar to the word Stargate, but usually get confused like differentiating wormholes from portals,
Mhm. Right.
stargates, and so forth. We know it's the same technology, but I would love for you to specify something about that.
Yeah, so the way that I define it, portals are naturally occurring. Even our scientists, like NASA scientists, have recognized that. Yeah, we do have portals. They've been studying portals outside the just right outside the planet called X points or these diffusion points. Basically, it's where um, the solar wind meets and interacts with the magnetism of the Earth or the magnetosphere, and these portals open and close at random intervals. They've had satellites up there for 10 years and they still have no predictive model of when these portals are going to open, how big they're going to open, how long they're going to stay open. They have no idea. They can just watch and observe. So a portal is randomly occurring in nature. A Stargate, to me, is an intelligent being's ability to harness that power of a portal and be able to use it at their will, to be able to, whether it's go to somewhere else in the cosmos, somewhere else on Earth, another dimension, another point in time, an altered state of consciousness. There's a lot of different uses for Stargates, but it's has an intention there by an intelligent being, whether it's human or otherwise.
Yes. Yes, I couldn't agree more. And just to add to that, for me, like comprehending the nature of what a wormhole is
Mhm.
allows us to know that the wormhole applies with to the stargates and to the portals, like
Yeah.
how to transfer your matter, what we call as matter, from point A to point B. That this doesn't happen linearly, that
Mhm.
you go through the continuum of space time. And that I would love to ask you another thing. Now that we're bringing, like also molecular aspects and
Yeah.
chemical, alchemical components and so forth. I always love to translate all technologies,
Mhm.
the biotechnology, at a mesoscale.
Yeah.
So, because perhaps a lot of people think that connecting with stargates or portals can be far fetched, at least now. The thing is that for me, what I have translated is that this is happening all the time within. So
Yeah,
go ahead.
absolutely. We are, as humans, we are multidimensional beings. So our fourth dimensional consciousness is inside our third dimensional body. Our theoretical physics show that we have up to 11 hyperspatial dimensions, 0 through 10. So that means all those other dimensions above 5, 6, 7, 8, they have access to us. So how do they access? Is that through a Stargate or some other technology? And so this kind of actually goes down a lot of the material that I've done with the possibilities of real time travel and all that is using basically everything comes down to frequency, resonance, energy, vibration. Each, if you're talking like time, for instance, each moment in time is a different frequency. So it's a matter of attuning the body to these different frequencies to be able to have access. So when we're talking about going through a Stargate, you don't even necessarily need the Stargate chamber. You can take yourself, as long as you're setting your frequency correctly, to these other points in times or other dimensions. We have that ability within ourselves.
Yes, absolutely. And it's very interesting because, for instance, you were talking about the regression.
Yeah.
If we look at this from a quantum physics approach, like the consciousness makes no point of reference, like not, it doesn't differentiate from what you're experiencing in that moment, laying on a couch, going through those memories, than going to a Stargate and then accessing to other dimension, interstellar
Mhm.
systems, and so forth. For me, what, and to some extent, generates the big impact in between these two
Mhm.
events is the magnitude of the imprint that your cell memories, or that your cells actually will anchor the level of energy that you're experiencing at that moment.
Mhm.
It's not the same going through a wormhole, right now,
Right.
and generating all that level of coherence in your molecular structure in order not to, leave part of
Right.
yourself in point A and just go part of you to point B. But, like that is something huge in comparison to when you are perhaps, going into a regression, just laying in the couch. So, where I'm heading with this is, in your experience, what would you say is the main purpose of, I'm going deep with it, okay? So,
Sure. Go ahead.
uh, what, in your opinion, what would be the main purpose of generating and harnessing these key points in a very specific point of space
Mhm.
if we can do everything from our mind?
Well, because I think what was happening with the Stargate chambers is, they were set up for specific purposes. Yes, we can do that, sitting here on the couch or the sofa or whatever, and you you have the ability to go, pretty much anywhere. But I think what the Stargate chambers were doing was helping to focus that. There are specific places that you want to go with this particular Stargate. It's harnessing a particular type of energy, a particular type of frequency, so that it has more power, and it's really kind of streamlined as a straight shot to whether you're going to Orion or some other location. Maybe you're going to another dimension. We find an Elephantine Island, these connections back to the ancient Mayan culture. So that Stargate there was probably specifically to connect those two. So I think it was to, like I was saying, to specifically harness a frequency and energy to go to more specific locations.
I love that. And to that, I would add that I have this theory or remembrance
Mhm.
that there are very specific wormholes that take us to the inner earth,
Yeah.
like 12 main ones, like the core ones. At some point, they were represented as well to the black sun. If you believe or if you think that there is a black hole at the center of the earth, as I do, as in the sun, as in every planet, like that black hole network
Mhm.
technology. So the difference is that you go beyond this simulation, because as long as you are here and your body is here, your matter laying, you can transfer your consciousness onto some extent. But the matter, which is so important, for instance, we see in ancient glyphs. I don't know if you have seen this one that I think I can share it in a bit, but there is
Okay.
this like mummy kind of being
Hmm.
with a huge plasma sphere around its head and around and another plasma sphere around its feet. So if you bend that being,
Hmm.
you're creating that wormhole.
Right. Exactly. Yeah,
And then
that's the same concept that's behind the Einstein-Rosen bridge. You're taking those 2 points and you're connecting them with the wormhole. Yeah, absolutely.
yeah, exactly. Exactly. So now talking about that, um how do you think that well, actually before going there, there are like so many things that are coming to my mind right now. I'm loving this talk, by the way. Thank
Great.
you. So,
Well, thank
you
you.
mentioned the presence of Mayans in Egypt. We know
Yeah.
that there was even, the Queen Maya, and there is the tomb with all these Mayan glyphs. But you mentioned in one of your videos specifically the headdress of um, one of the
Context.
goddesses, the
Yeah.
Neteru, at Elephantine Island. Can you tell us
Mhm.
more about
Yeah, it's fascinating, because Elephantine Island, was the structures there are built primarily by Hatshepsut, which we already know that she's one of our Stargate kings, and, her temple there, is at, by Luxor is that's again, like the epitome of a Stargate. And then Tutmos the third also did some work on that island. And these are two of our Stargate kings. So when we say Stargate kings, um, when we actually look at the hieroglyphs that spell out Stargate, there it's usually assigned to a king. This king had the authority. This king had the power to activate the Stargate, or at least authorize the activation of the Stargate. So we have these two kings associated with this island. The Temple of Khnum at the top. The only thing left standing is a gate, and it's really interesting to see the setup there because one side of it, yeah, although the temple really no longer exists except for the gate, it's there's not
Yes.
much clutter or anything. It's in relatively good condition. The other side of it, everything has just been like knocked over, like a kid with his wooden blocks just knocked everything over, like something blasted out of that gate to topple over the temple. You're talking like huge multi-ton Aswan rose granite shrines and things like this. It's like, what in the world happened here? So some sort of power came through that gate. Either they misused it, or maybe there was even a confrontation that they had. We don't know. But down the hill from that, so you have the Stargate up at the top. Down the hill from that is the Temple of Satet. And as you are walking through that and you're headed toward the Holy of Holies inside, there's a depiction of Satet giving a necklace with an amulet to the king, basically for protection to go inside the Holy of Holies. But Satet is wearing a Mayan headdress, something that you didn't find in Egypt, but there she is wearing it. And so the question then becomes, was that Stargate there a connection back to the ancient Mayan culture? Is that why we're seeing this depiction here just down the hill from it?
Hmm. Now that you mentioned that, it brings me. I don't know if you have been to Medinet Habu in Luxor. Well,
Hmm.
actually, West Bank, and you have this huge wall at the entrance of the temple. Is
Yes.
one of the best preserved ones
Hmm.
so far,
Right.
along, along with Esna. But then you have a lot of these beings with that feathered headdress, and they call them the sea people.
Hmm.
Now, when you come to Yucatan and you are going through Uxmal, and
Hmm.
you go dive into the story of, the primordial gods and so forth, they
Right.
say that the seven water sages came from the
Mhm.
sea. This is why they're water
Right.
sages, and started educating and
Right.
planting seeds of knowledge. So you have this huge constant of people
Mhm.
coming from the sea from one place to another. Even like it's very also very valid what you have said about the
Yeah.
Stargate, because there are many beings. Like it's not that there was just one Sasset.
Mhm.
There were like different
Oh, yeah,
beings.
yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
So
that's fascinating, talking about the 7 sages because we find the 7 sages mentioned in so many cultures across the world that you they had to have existed. The traditional academia saying, "Oh, it's just all mythology." Well, how does everybody have the same mythology? They're all talking about the same thing. So, yeah, it's wonderful finding those connections like that.
have you ever tuned into any Stargates under the sea, under the ocean?
Yeah, what's interesting about that, there is so much there under the ocean that we have not yet explored. It's like, 10, 15% is all we know about under the ocean floor. And so that, you know, uh, even in the ufology community, we talk about the UFO bases and things like this under the water. And yeah, absolutely, there could be stargates under the water that we have not yet discovered. We know there's so much, even over the last however many thousands of years, the sea floor has risen 400 feet. So there's probably some that are a little bit closer to the surface, maybe just under 50 or 100 feet of water that we haven't yet discovered that are out there. So yeah, stargates under the ocean, absolutely.
Now, what about, because I remember, like from years ago, if you ask me what is people truly battling
Mhm.
over, what is the main purpose of wars? It's energy.
Yeah.
in different manners
Mhm.
and applications. And now I have added to that control over time. So we know that there is a lot going on right now regarding to Stargates.
Right.
You know, so I would love to know your opinion on that.
Yeah, there's always this ongoing struggle of trying to obtain power over a variety of different things, whether it's yeah energy or energy resources, time. Certainly, if you control time, you can go back and change history, and people wouldn't even know it. That's when you get things like the Mandela effect. Like, wait a minute, I remember this being a different. It's because somebody changed the timeline. But yeah, I mean, we find, of course, we know that part of the war in Iraq was going to the museum there, stealing the power pieces out of there, like not things that were on display. It wasn't just grab and go. It was there were specific items in the back that were not on display that were grabbed, and they were the important ones. When I was the first time I went to Egypt, it was so Dendera has multiple crypts. Everybody's familiar with the one that has the light bulb. But I the first time I went, they had just opened up another one of those crypts. The first time in 20 years it had been opened up. And I go in and looking around, yeah, there weren't any more light bulbs. But the thing that I did notice was what wasn't there. There are a lot of blocks that were just missing out of the walls. And you're looking around the ground, well, the block's not on the ground. Where did it go? And you're seeing, on the wall these fresh white chisel marks that are all the way down. It's like, oh, those were taken kind of recently. So when I went back up and making, remarks to the group about this of, what I noticed, and one of the docents there at the temple said, "Shh, stop, and come over here." I'm like, what? What's the matter? He's like, don't talk about it. Like, why? And basically, what was going on, what I was told was that those 20 years when it was inaccessible, they had noted and recognized which were the power pieces, the important knowledge that was on the walls, removed the blocks, and private investors and private collectors had bidding wars on those blocks because they believe that those pieces and that knowledge is going to give them the power.
Well, if we talk about lattices, and quantum entanglement and how you can store all the information in crystals as quantum
Yeah.
drives, they are definitely resonating like
Mhm.
strongly. Yet now that you bring Dendera, so many things to talk about Dendera,
They go on and on. Yeah.
yeah, and I think that everyone love it's one of the temples that people loves the most. Like one of the
Beautiful.
favorites.
Yeah.
I know. I could live there. You know.
Yeah.
Anyways, um, in the Mamisis, the chamber, the big chamber that is called the Mamisis,
Yes.
um, right in the entrance on the left right side, there is this false door, and
Hmm.
it has the glyph of Stargate.
Right.
So how would you describe to the beautiful tribe that is joining us right now, or that will be watching this transmission later? How would you explain what happens at mechanical level,
Mhm.
when the door opens, like there is no
Right.
any longer, like rocks, or like in Peru in the Stargate of Anamuru, or I don't remember the name precisely, but Aramuru.
Yeah.
Aramuru.
Amaru Muru. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Right. Yeah.
So
They're Lake Titicaca. Yeah. Lake Titicaca is a lot easier to say than Amaru Muru. It's
I know.
yeah, what I did an episode of Ancient Aliens a few years ago on Stargates, and that was the one that we talked about. And none of my footage from the interview got used because I was mispronouncing the name the whole time. They showed me talking about other things, but that one, no, because I was mispronouncing it. I'm like, oh no. But
Next time you can say, okay, every time that I want to refer to that place, I will say a, and then
yeah, there
yeah,
you go.
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's a transformation. It's extraordinarily transformative, and it's all about light and energy. Talking about Marimuro, one of the legends from there, one of the stories is that when the Spanish conquistadors, came in, that the indigenous peoples were on the run, and the last emperor went there, took something out of his pocket, put it into the notch in the back of the T-shaped doorway, and all of a sudden there was this great light that came out, and he walked in, and he was gone. And that's the type of stories that you find. And even if going back to that past life regression that I had, I mean, that's what was pretty much appearing in the doorway. It was a light being. So it all has to do with light and energy. So when these are activated, I mean, that's what you're going to see. That's what you're going to experience, or these travel by light and by energy.
Hmm. Well, speaking of that, I have this huge connection with plasma physics. That's
Mhm.
a lot of what I
Yeah.
talk about. So when we see for instance, the plasma beings and how they
Mhm.
interact with us, and now you mentioned them coming from the Stargate, I believe that one of the huge quests that we have as a human cosmic race is to literally enlighten our body
Yeah.
to reach that plasmic state,
Mhm.
and we're capable to just be communicating and generating this mimetic field
Right.
that in terms of frequency, that then we're capable to go beyond, like this huge quantum entanglement, and then go beyond, the like generate. Well, it's kind of complex. I don't want to get into the physics to
Oh, it's
that.
okay. It's okay. No, I mean, when it comes to plasmoids, it's something that I talk about in Portals to the Stars, that you have so many of these, reports of, UFO sightings. We even had this back during when it was the big drone flap a year and a half ago, that a lot of people see the UFOs go in and out of the balls of light. So yeah, sometimes people think the balls of light are the UFOs, but a lot of times people see UFOs going in and out of the balls of light. A lot of times when people have like a Sasquatch sighting, or maybe they see it in ET or whatever, a lot of times they also see the balls of light, and the balls of light being a type of plasmoid. Well, I think these are the portals themselves, because when we see our representation of a wormhole or portal or something like this in like our science fiction television shows and films and things like that, it's always a big circle, right? And you walk through the big circle. The one that I think that got this really right, and they had a physicist that consulted on it, was Interstellar. And the way that they depicted their wormhole that they took, the opening for it was a sphere, because two-dimensional circle and three-dimensional space is not a circle, it's a sphere. So I think a lot of these plasmoids are the openings, and using all that energy, that's why it's plasmoidic. Uh, that's the actual opening and gateway to that particular wormhole, wherever it's going to take you.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. It brings me to, for instance, the Aten for Aten.
Mhm.
A lot of people relate it to the solar disk or to the solar forest. I feel and I remember it's talking about an orb. It's about that
Right.
harnessed plasma energy being as a source of life, accessing to that 0 point field. Even for me, when I translate the ancient glyphs, for me,
Mhm.
they're bidimensional. They're holographically or holofractally mainly projecting as spheres. And then
Mhm.
you get like a cumul of spheres that are connecting to the space memory network. So I think that's a very easy way to understand, comprehend how the physics of this function, don't you think, Mike? Because, for instance, if we say, okay, so now how is that at a biological level my mind gets to travel and actually activate, deactivate timelines, change timelines, and so forth of what happened when I was like this years old, or in another lifetime, and so forth. And I do believe because we are using the same foundations of
Mhm.
how we can be traveling at a quantum level, bringing information back and forward and restoring it. And that's what's happening at the Stargate level.
Yeah.
So, for instance, now you were talking about the places in, like, for the Mayans, for instance. Um, have you ever been to Mexico?
I have not. We're planning on doing a tour there next year. So we're really looking forward to it.
Okay, when you do, just let me know, and then I can definitely be suggesting to you some places.
Great.
What is your input on stargates and pyramids? They
Well, I
have,
believe that no, there's definitely a correlation. I believe that the pyramids are harnessing extra power for the stargates. Again, Hatshepsut's temple, off to the one side are the remnants of it's totally obliterated. It's not there anymore. But the base of an old pyramid that was there that would have been channeling energy into the Stargate. Same thing on Elephantine Island. Back behind those two temples is a small pyramid. And so, I mean, Christopher Dunn's done a lot of great work on Giza power plant theory and everything, but I mean, even science is gotten on board with this. It was 7 or 8 years ago. They did some research with the Great Pyramid, and they did confirm, yes, the Great Pyramid of Giza is pulling energy from the ground and containing it within its chambers there. And then I think it was last year, there was a Chinese team that discovered there were plasma bubbles that were forming above the Great Pyramid. So, yeah, these are very energetic devices that would have been helping to power things like the Stargates.
yes, I agree. I agree. I think that even at some point above some of the pyramids, there were stargates. I mean, I
Yeah.
have seen depictions in Mexico about pyramids, and above the calendar, the Aztec calendar,
Mhm.
that it's a circular shaped, template, and two beings around it, like holding it, and then you
Yeah.
just need to make the sequence, to generate the sequence by yourself. But and now, for instance, Amethyst Hierophant, that is talking about, like, the biblically the angel
Yeah,
with eyes
Brandon.
all around the sphere. How would you relate that to what we're talking about?
Yeah.
Orphanim, I think it is the orphanim.
Yeah, I mean, it very well could be. And I do like that to see Brandon down there. He's a great guy. So,
Yeah, him. Yeah.
yeah. Oh,
Oh, you know
yeah,
him.
we were at his, event, the, Cosmic Contact Conference there back in, Maryland in January. It was great. So, run the question by me again because I got a little distracted. I was trying to read his comment there on the screen.
No, it's okay. I was also going to be there at the conference.
Mhm.
In the end, I couldn't join, but we were meant to meet anyway, one way or the other, Mike. So, we're like, Amethyst Hierophant was talking about the orphanim, which are this kind of, rings
Mhm.
that are related to whether spacecrafts, or also the looking at glass technology. Like, they are
Yeah.
rotating fast, harnessing the plasma, and then from. Okay, so
Right. I mean, it's all related. I mean, these are ways that we're harnessing energy, be able to use it for a variety of different purposes. Ways of, I mean, even harnessing light. So yeah, it's all related because it all comes it all comes back to energy, frequency, resonance, vibration. So these are different ways that we are manipulating energy and being able to use it for different purposes, and that transcends the physical reality that we see around us. It connects to other dimensions, other places in the cosmos. So, yeah, it's all related.
now, as everything is, like, as it's all related, and we're in a unified universe, in a connected universe.
Right.
Let's talk about the T, because for me, the T is a code, a super important code. I kind of related at some point to the biology again,
Mhm.
and the interdimensional body. I would love for you to talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, we see the tea, all over the world, and had a fascinating moment. I actually caught it on camera. It's like, here's the download moment. So, I was at, Pueblo Bonito, Chaco Canyon, New Mexico,
Uh-huh.
and, I've got my camera with me, and I'm filming everything that I'm doing, and came across one of the T-shaped doorways, and so I'm set up in the camera, I'm talking about it, and all of a sudden, I stop. And I'm just kinda looking and I'm staring and, like, the information's coming, and I'm like, "This T is simply an inversion of the T-shaped pillars that we see at Göbekli Tepe." They're connected somehow, so it's just I knew it right in that moment. There's a connection there, and this is something we find this in so much symbolism all across the world, that there's this message, and the T's are one of these. So, yes, they were the pillars in Göbekli Tepe. But we see, yes, the T's. Well, we were talking about Marumuru a little while ago. There's two gates there. The one is the gateway of the gods, which is the big 11-foot one that's there. But then you have the human one, the T shape, to pass through. When you look at in Egypt, the hieroglyphs. When we look at the hieroglyphs for Stargate, well, the gate itself is a T shape. So we find this consistent message that that the T is extremely important. Now, when we look at Gobekli Tepe, um, you have many of them that are basically like anthropomorphic humans. You have the folded hands and that, but you have other ones that just have other beings and characters on it. So, what I think is this was a representation of uh, us becoming the gateway. There it is. There's the gate. There's the human. We are the gateway. And what do is we end up passing through these T-shaped doorways, which lead to very important places within the structure. And then, of course, we're finding it in the Stargate symbolism and other places as well, like Pumapunku. You have if you look at the H blocks, you're finding T's within, the H blocks. So this was a universal symbolism that described for the ancients our passage as humans, our energetic body through the gateway.
Or perhaps they were showing to us the first forms of the alphabet. I'm just kidding. So,
Yeah,
no,
maybe that. Um,
No, I agree. It's like the T. I see the Vitruvius Man. When we
yeah.
just expand our
Mhm.
arms and then create that T shape, and then with the Vitruvius Man, it's just showing to us the fourth state of the cross or the T, in which we are not only bidimensional. We are already spinning.
Right.
So now, which leads me to the next one. If we see the T, if we align it to the body, the
Mhm.
T will be mainly around our thymus and our high heart.
Right.
And we're talking about plasma coherence, what it's needed, required in order to activate our plasma body, enlightenment, and so forth. It's in terms of physics, and also even at from a cognitive level, it's coherence.
Mhm.
There's like a the different levels. So, do you think it's super important to have plasma coherence in order to achieve those levels of connection, being called to the stargates, seeing
Mhm.
them, or the portals? Do you think that's related?
Well, I think it would be helpful. I think that might make the whole process of connecting a little bit easier. And perhaps that happens as you continue to, whether maybe you're just trying to do it from a meditative state or whatever, not in a Stargate chamber. But that could be something that eventually happens over time as you continue to, go down your path, is develop that coherence. But I think it just helps to strengthen matters. Like, it's
Yeah,
not necessarily a requirement, but definitely helpful.
yeah, I agree. I agree because, like, if we ask ourselves, if everyone who is using now Stargate technology is in full heart coherence, well, perhaps not. I don't know.
Yeah,
I don't want to judge.
right, right.
But I do feel that for teleportation and or other type of interdimensional capabilities as psionics, definitely there is something about the purity of the heart and how to harness that. I'm not saying that you need to be like all love. No, it's
Mm,
just a matter of the purity of the heart. You know that how
yeah.
easy is it for you to flow and amplify and harness those amount of gamma
Yeah,
waves.
exactly, and again, it kinda goes back to you're setting a frequency. Every time that you do that, you're setting a frequency.
Have you been, speaking of which, have you been to the Serapium?
Oh, yeah. That's a favorite, absolutely, yeah. Been there many
Nice.
times.
Have
Yeah,
you?
so go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say it's interesting, the different, theories about what exactly they were used for, and one of the things that we keep coming back to was this idea of regeneration. You would go inside the one of the boxes and you would experience that regeneration. So it's fascinating. Other people have said, well, I think there might be batteries for the pyramid up the hills. I don't, but maybe. Yeah, there's a lot of interesting ideas, but we keep coming back to regeneration.
Yeah. What about the theory that the main academic says that they were used as sarcophags for bulls?
For Apis bulls, and
I know.
no Apis bull was ever found within one. So and the one bull that they said was buried at the site, they can't find it. It's supposed to be at some museum. It's never been on display. If you ask them if it's in the back room, they're like, "No, can't find it." So this mysterious bull that's never been seen is attributed to why they built these huge, and it makes no sense. Just the type of technology that you would have to use to get these things in there, because you're talking like huge 70-ton Aswan rose granite boxes that, for one, have to get delivered up there 500 miles, and then you're gonna try to maneuver it down these tiny little corridors. Like, I mean, by if you're using just sheer, human power to do that, you can't get enough people in those corridors to try at 70 tons to try to maneuver that. It's not happening. So,
Exactly.
yeah.
I know. I have even heard a theory that some people say that they would use it to harness, let's say, the plasma biofield of many beings. Like, there are many theories, but
Yeah.
I do agree that having that level of well, being capable to generate that harmonic frequency,
Mm.
it definitely regenerates. It's
Yeah.
structuring your water and therefore your cells. So I don't know. I think that, I mean, I told you before going live, I was living in Egypt for 4 years.
Mhm. Right.
I I think I look 10 years younger than when I was there.
That's wonderful. Yeah.
No, but yeah, there is a lot of technology going on there. It's crazy how the mainstream always categorize those amazing technologies. They
Mhm.
simplify them into temples, into sarcophags,
Yeah.
and like funerary chambers. That's it.
Yeah,
Aside of
that's
that,
it. Yeah, we simplify and dumb down everything. They have their narrative that they want to adhere to, and that's it. We can't attribute more fantastical things to the ancients when they were doing fantastic and amazing things. And just even simple things that you can see it with your own eyes. They try to say that, well, everything was built with stone and copper tools. Yet you go to the Egyptian Museum in Cairo, it's kind of hidden in the back, but you can go see it. It's a sarcophagus that's laying there on its side, and you can plainly see that they were cutting the lid for it right off the underside of the sarcophagus. And you just simply look down the slit that was there. Apparently, it broke off mid-cut, so they abandoned it. But you can see the curvature of two circular saws, one on top of the other, that would have been cutting this. Now, according to traditional academia, ancient Egyptians didn't have circular saws. Looking right at it, yes, they did. And it had
And
to have been something, given that it's granite, it would have had been something like a diamond tip saw blade that was cutting
yes.
this. You can see it with your eyes. It's right there. And with no, 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 no. Stone and copper tools. Okay, sure.
Well, here in Mexico, in Palenque, one of the places that I suggest you to visit when you come here, I can even take you on your beautiful wife. Um, it's they call it like the place of the main king, known as the astronaut.
Okay.
That had this lead with like all these glyphs that it's showing him, like as he's about to take off. You know,
Yeah, at Palenque, right?
Palenque,
Yeah.
exactly, Pacal. So
Paca yes.
there are a lot of T's there,
Mhm.
like
Yeah.
T-shaped like holes in the pyramids and in the structures, T's everywhere. They call it here the ik, which is the breath of life.
Okay.
Very interesting
Yeah.
regarding to how, from here, the center, you can actually emit that breath of life, because I didn't finish, like the thymus that generates the T glands that are related to regeneration,
Yeah.
so everything, as you said, comes together. But as yet aside of that, where I was heading to with Palenque is that there is this like the when we're talking about the star, actually it's not even in Palenque, it's in Uxmal, but anyway, so there is a way to open up the Stargate of the pyramid, they say.
Mhm.
You have to say the name 3 times and generate a
Okay.
very specific frequency. And
Right.
it's Nachtun. And then it will take you to Orion's Nebula, to the turtle, which is
Mhm.
how the Mayans would consider Orion, the turtle. So now, indeed, bringing back Palenque for another with another connection. In Palenque, when we see this figure of Bacal, then you get all these. They found a lot of cinnabar in
Okay.
its tomb,
Interesting.
like red powder. Yeah, as
Mhm. Yeah.
in Teotihuacan, like the liquid mercury, that was.
Right, yeah. Yeah.
So, what is the most impressive technology that you have found so far when it comes to these ancient sites that you have been to?
Oh, that's a tough question. It really is, because there are so many interesting things, aside from, like the physical things that we were just talking about. But and we mentioned another one earlier with the false doors, and these were these connections of, yeah, the person we always relate it to the afterlife journey, because that's our context. But for the ancient Egyptians, it was just another part of life, but they would return to the constellation of Orion. And one of the things that I have found really fascinating is that um one of the aspects of that journey back to Orion was the kings would become stars.
Yeah.
And, well, Orion has the Orion Nebula, which is a huge star-generating nebula. So, the idea that the ancient Egyptians had such a connection back to the universe, to the cosmos, that they knew of these different things going on up there, that only modern science, like today, using telescopes and that we were able to see in modern times, but they already knew. So they had some sort of technology that would take them there and know these different things, because for them, I think it was just always there. It was something that, yes, they did come from, and this could go down like a whole rabbit hole of how I believe, humanity's not are originally from Earth, and we have come from the stars. Yeah, quite possibly Orion, Sirius, these other locations, like the Dogons knowing about Sirius B. It was like, how do they know about that? Because they probably came from there. And we had many stops along the way. Like, I believe, Mars was one of those stops along the way. The planet between Mars and Jupiter, that was probably another one. We ended up here, and I believe the Egyptians have always maintained, or had always maintained, that connection until eventually, the technology got lost.
Would you say that's one of the main points what they have been limiting disclosure so that we don't remember that that's our origin?
That's probably part of it. Also, you would be, admitting to having technologies that we could be using right now. Again, it comes, power, energy, all that. Free energy we should have. It's what
Yeah,
that we are still on, burning fossil fuels and all of that. Even the way that we are trying to harness the wind with all those, turbines and everything is, which I always kind of laugh at. It's like, we're harnessing this wind power so that we can save the planet from the fossil fuels. And it's like, yeah, but you just made the planet look like crap with all these turbines up there. It's like, you know,
I know.
'cause
Yeah.
it would have been a scenic vista, beautiful, and yeah, okay. So, but that's
I
just
know.
it's another method of control. We're coming off of that system onto this system, but the ancients, they had free use of energy to be able to, how are they moving those huge um uh boxes into the Serapeum? It's, they had some sort of power to do that, and it was not a steam engine, it was not wind. It might have been sound energy, might have been some sort of plasmoidal uh that they were using. A lot of different possibilities are on the table here, and yeah, that's being repressed from us.
Yes, I am very much into that plasma physics theory about being capable to manipulate the space, the curvature of space, and
Mm,
then like manifesting, oh, well, rendering different type of
mhm.
molecular structures all the way until manifesting into matter. Yet, I remembered another thing is that in Palenque there is like this granite U,
Okay.
like U-shaped structure, and they say that they used it like the soccer players
Mhm.
would use it in their hips to hit
Oh, and hit
the
the ball. Yeah.
ball.
Yeah.
And I'm like, how does that work?
Yeah.
It's like to
Sometimes
use
somehow you have to hit it with your hip and go way up there. I don't know. I don't know how that works.
with a heavy granite. I don't know
Yeah.
how much it weighs, but a huge U-shaped granite and hitting
Mhm.
with that water wall. How does that make sense? And here you go, like people being educated, indoctrinated with those ideas.
Yeah.
Nobody questions, or well, hardly anyone. Fortunately, we are now starting
We
to
are.
question
Yeah.
everything. But before that, like even in Mexico, just that when you do your tour here,
Mhm.
don't say that you are the tour leader because then they will ask you for your license.
Mhm.
Because if you don't have a license, they don't allow you to express your thoughts to others in the ancient.
Interesting. Okay. That's
So
interesting.
it is you have to go and the same stream, as the old school. I could like, and it's but anyway, all of that is shifting. It's definitely shifting.
Good.
So
Good.
one last question
Sure.
before I don't want to to take more of your time. Although I know that we have been having a lot of fun. Well,
We
at
have,
least I.
yes.
So, um, now with all of these technologies that we have been exploring, like Stargates, portals, what do you think is coming up next for human evolution? What's the invitation for humanity?
A number of different things. You know, um, we're in an interesting point in our history where we're able to talk about these things in a very public format like this, where if we'd been talking about these sorts of things 50 years ago, we might have been thrown away into a psychiatric hospital or something like that. We're all deemed crazy, and that was the worldview back then. But we have through use of the internet and other means, we've been able to talk about this. More people are becoming aware, and I think that we have space travel and all these things that we are going to be exploring that we need to, but consciousness and the human connection back to the universe. We've been so closed off, and we've built these fortresses around us. The ancients, they were always connected with nature. They were always connected with the universe. So the next step for me is really a rediscovery of those connections, and our consciousness and our energy plugging back into the universe like we used to.
Would you say that we can use those technologies to mirror into them and from within as a unified consciousness activate them as a whole? For instance, there are different scenarios of what can be happening right now
Mm.
in Earth. Like we talk about reset, we talk about a new Earth, we talk about communities, we talk about many things.
Yeah.
So for me, one of the highest timelines would be coming as a collective, as a unity, in unity consciousness, as a
Yeah.
unified consciousness, and reaching that point that we can actually command all those nexus, all those networks, as the pyramidal one, as the Stargate one, as the, like portal wise and so forth, with very specific purposes. First, free energy, which
Yeah.
for me, I agree, it's fundamental.
Yeah.
And because I know that at some point, like, and I always say this, we have pyramidal neurons in our brain.
Yeah.
Like, why wouldn't it be a reality that when they built the pyramids, or the other way around, when they built, like created the human form,
Right.
we're thinking about how these two could be connected
Mhm.
and coupling and reach out to different outcomes, like harnessing a very specific high frequency field around the earth. So for me, that's next. And also acknowledging that if we want to achieve free energy outside, we have to achieve it within,
Yes.
you know?
Yeah, absolutely. It's that, it's that old hermetic principle, as above, so below, as it is within, so it is without. Yeah, and that's the, real connection, us to the universe. And so, yeah, when we look back at what the ancients did, they were always mirroring. They were always mirroring other concepts, other ideas that they had. They were mirroring the gods, and always, mirroring again back to the cosmos. So yeah, it's those connections, and we need to reestablish those.
Yeah, well, we have some homework, right?
Yes, this is true.
Where can people find you, Mike?
Yeah, you can find me. MikeRicksecker.com is my primary website. I also have the Connected Universe portal website, a YouTube channel, all kinds of social media. I have my podcast, Connecting the Universe. So, yeah, you can find me in a lot of different places.
And also at the Rise of the Guardians, guys.
Rise of
Remember.
the yes, Rise of the Guardians. May 8th through the 10th will be there. Sedona. Yes, going back to Sedona, which is incredible.
Yeah, yeah.
Looking
I'm
forward
very
to it.
excited. I'm very
Yeah.
excited about the Stargate activation and so forth. I think that Sedona has a critical role, like a critical play in this ascension stage.
Yes.
I feel it deep in my heart. So, and even also, like all these red lands that we have been talking about.
Yeah.
uh, we didn't bring, by the way, Moshe, perhaps at some point in another show.
Sure.
um, Also, there is a lot to talk about that,
Mhm.
and the technology that they had in those ancient times, and that was translated as 10% of what it truly was. But anyway, do you have any upcoming events, like trips, expeditions?
Yeah. So have a lot coming up as far as tours. So we have a tour to Turkey that is
Oh,
September 8th through the what is that? September 8th through the 20th, something like that. I have to take a look at the flyer. But it's the beginning of September. We have a tour to Turkey at the beginning of September, ancient mysteries of Turkey. We actually have a trip to Germany directly following that. So we have like 3 days off, and then we're headed to Germany. The next year, we have our fourth Stargates of Ancient Egypt tour, which will be March 21st through April 2nd. And then, like I said, we're in talks now, planning a Mexico tour. So that we're looking late April next year. So just sign up for my newsletter, check out my website. You'll find out all that information there.
okay. Well, that sounds very exciting.
Yeah.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much for being here. Guys, the conferences that I will be presenting at, we have the upcoming The Alien event on March, Rise of the Guardians, May. Then we have the Star Knowledge at South Dakota in June, and also upcoming trips to Egypt, Mexico, and Peru. So stay tuned. Oh, and Damanur in Italy, by the way. So
Oh,
stay tuned. Yeah, yeah. If you want to
very nice.
join, yeah.
Yeah, that'd be fun. Yeah. Oh, my wife Kate, she loves Italy. I actually have not yet been to Italy, so I would love to.
Yeah, well, Damanhur is close to Turin, where the shroud is.
Oh,
It's close to many important places, and the place
yeah.
itself, as you know, it's like this huge underground Atlantean complex.
Yeah,
So very inspiring to creating now these communities.
that'd
So
be fantastic. Yeah.
yes. Well, I want to thank you, everyone. Thank you, guys, for joining us. Thank you, Brandon. It was very nice seeing you here and sharing some love back at you. And well, thank you, everyone, for all your beautiful comments, for your beautiful presence. Looking forward to seeing you soon. And until the next time, thank you, Mike. Thank you I
Thank you.
truly appreciate your knowledge, wisdom, and yeah, sending a big hug. Thank you.
Thank
Until
you.
next time.
Till
Bonjour.
next